ولم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. نستغفر الله ربنا من كل ذنب ونتوب إليك. ربنا زدنا علما، اللهم يسر ولا تعسر وتمم بالخير يا فتاح يا فتاح يا فتاح آمين يا رب العالمين. So inshallah we'll recite a few ayats from Surah Yusuf. We'll read from ayah number 38. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واتبعت ملة آبائي إبراهيم وإسحاق ويعقوب ما كان لنا أن نشرك بالله من شيء ذلك من فضل الله علينا وعلى الناس ولكن أكثر الناس لا يشكرون. يا صاحب السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. يا صاحب السجن أما أحدكما فيسقي ربه خمرا وأما الآخر فيصلب فتأكل الطير من رأسه قضي الأمر الذي فيه تستفتيان. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh once again. So inshallah today we'll be covering two ayats, ayah number 39 and 40, inshallah. So we'll keep it a little shorter. I know we are in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, so we might want to catch some sleep or things like that. So I'll keep the sessions fairly shorter, inshallah. And so we get other ibadat in, inshallah. But I don't want to stop these halaqat, even though it is difficult for me also in the last 10 nights. But I do want to do it because, we want to be constantly learning the Quran, right? Understanding the book of Allah, what the message is, half an hour or so of understanding the book of Allah there's way more value in that than 3 hours of recitation without understanding, right? So that's my motivation. So let's inshallah continue. So we talked about a few things about Yusuf alayhi salam's response. So when the prison mates come and ask Yusuf alayhi salam about the dream, he says that I know your time is important. I am considerate of your time. Before the next meal comes to you, I will inform you of what the dream is about. And then he talks about, he starts giving da'wah, right? We talked about a lot of different points on da'wah and how calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And one of the main themes were shukr, that you're not doing shukr to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're getting the food, starting from the food to your life, to everything you have, all of that deserves shukr, right? A person might question, well, we were asking about the dream. He should have just given us the answer for the dream. Why is he going in all of these things, right? The dream is about life and death, right? The concern is life and death. And he says he says what's really important with life and death is your iman, right? If you don't have iman, if you don't have, if you don't know what the purpose of life is, then there's no point in even living, right? So the whole purpose of worry, this is a main worry. The dream is not the actual problem, because life and death is in the hands of Allah, right? The dream interpretation I'll give you, but this is really important, actually. Okay, so a few points I want to mention before I move on to ayah number 39. One we said was respecting people's time. Another one is that when we are doing da'wah, when we are calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should never think that we are favoring the people, right? We are favoring the people by telling them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, it is the people who are favoring us by allowing us to lend a ear so that we can speak about the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That's a very important uh, humble humility lesson for all of us, right? People who are especially in da'wah, don't think, no, we should always, sometimes we should take the back seat and become listeners, right? Listening is actually way more beneficial. But if you're giving, if you're speaking, if you're telling others, know that when you're telling others, actually a reminder for yourself, and they are doing a favor to you by listening to your kalam. Just like in sadaqat, when we give sadaqah, we're not favoring the poor by giving the money to the poor, right? Rather, the poor is favoring us by accepting the sadaqah from us. If there were no poor people, then what would have happened to our sadaqat? Who would have accepted our sadaqat? How would we have gotten the ajr? How would we have pleased Allah? That would not have happened. So that's another, point to think about and reflect, that Allah has given you the chance to speak. Okay. Also, another thing to note here is that when he talked about the Egyptian religion, right, he says, I have left the millah of a nation that does not believe. Qawmin, like in common, it's nakira. A nation, some nation, right? Not even the nation, some nation that doesn't believe in Allah. But when it comes to the people of Tawheed, he mentions them by name. Like my heroes are Ibrahim and Ishaq and Yaqub. These are my heroes. These are the people I know, I've studied, I've known them in and out. But the other, he doesn't even care about it. He doesn't give any importance to it. He says, قَوْمٍ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. He doesn't even take the time to mention Egyptians or, all these Aziz or whatnot, nothing, right? Yes.
Regardless of how they were, he's not even putting a negative image of them.
Yeah.
Like if he refers to them,
Yeah.
he's kind of backbiting in a way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all another balance. Perfect, right? So he doesn't talk bad about them, right? He doesn't look down upon them. He just says these people who don't believe in Allah and they're disbelievers, right? So yeah, good. So that's something when we are talking about other religion, other faiths, we are proud of our faith. We're proud of our lineage. We are proud of, our legacy, our forefathers, our heroes. We are proud of them. We are, honored to be Muslims. We'll be honored to be from the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the legacy is Ishaq, Yaqub, Yusuf alayhi salam. Also, we are the followers of Yusuf alayhi salam. He's our father in a way also. So we are honored for that, and we should be proud of that. And don't look for other people, other nations to kind of, tell us or kind of validate us. Okay. We don't need the laptops. Okay. So I have already started here. So is it Subhan's fault?
I
Oh,
don't have.
all
I
right.
took a bus.
Okay. All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So let's continue, inshallah, ayah number 39. يا صاحب السجن أأرباب متفرقون خير أم الله الواحد القهار ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء سميتموها أنتم وآباؤكم ما أنزل الله بها من سلطان إن الحكم إلا لله أمر ألا تعبدوا إلا إياه ذلك الدين القيم ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. Let's do a running translation. Oh, my prison mates, right? يا صاحب السجن, my companions in the prison. Are multiple gods or multiple different masters and forces better, or Allah, the one and the one who is always the one who always overwhelms others? ما تعبدون من دونه إلا أسماء. Whatever you worship besides Allah, besides Him, these are just names that you have just made up yourself. You have made up, your forefathers have made this up. Allah has not given any power to them. Allah has not given any power to these false gods. Inil hukmu illa lillah. The governance and the power and the wisdom, belongs to Allah. He has commanded that you worship none except Him. That is the upright religion, but most people do not know. A very powerful speech of Yusuf alayhi salam here. Let's break it down, understand, inshallah. These are the two ayat that we'll cover today, inshallah. So if you notice in the previous ayat, he was very much in talking in the third person. He was hinting to it. He was not direct with them, right? He's like, "ذَلِكُمْ مِمَّا my Rabb taught me this. You should be grateful. The food that has been provided to you, people don't believe. I follow the religion of my forefather." Like very third person. He's not direct. But in these two ayat, Yusuf alayhi salam becomes very direct, very on point. Dawah becomes, a little bit, you can say, more of negative reinforcement. First was positive reinforcement. Like you'll study, like I don't have the time to go over this, but if you study the da'wah of the prophets in the Quran, right? There's There's this pattern to it. They always start with positive reinforcement. Think about this. Didn't Allah give you this? Didn't Allah give you this? Look at this favor, look at this favor. Like think about Nuh alayhi salam, the story of Nuh itself, the way it starts, right? It's very positive reinforcement. If you do istighfar to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yumdidukum bi amwal, Allah will give you children and money, right? وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ جَنَّاتٍ, He will make you rivers and all that, gardens, rivers, positive reinforcement, and then it becomes negative reinforcement. Then the azab comes, right? But here we see that Yusuf alayhi salam actually does all of that in these few ayat, just like literally these ayat will take you less than a minute to recite. In just less than a minute, he goes through the same sequence of the prophets, except that in a very short time. Okay, and like directly, he doesn't spend a lot of time with them, right? Doesn't spend years with them and then builds up to the da'wah, right to the point, and he's gonna get right to it. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is, as scholars mentioned, that these two men, this is probably the final time they're seeing Yusuf alayhi salam or talking to Yusuf alayhi salam, getting to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. First and last time, perhaps. Because we know one of them is going to be dead from the dream, we already know. The other one, well, Egyptian society is not very good that he's going to hear the words of Allah. So for him, this is it. Like, I only have them right now. I have to convey this important message to them, right? Like, he just gets right to the point. That's a sign of urgency being shown here in these ayats. Like how important this is. Let me get to it. And before he gets to the hard message, he begins with some words of kindness. Ya sahiba as-sijn, all the companions of my prison, all my companions of the prison, right? A lot of love in there, right? Sahib, ashab, like my companions, like my buddies, my boys, like that type of a language, right? Sahib, that's what sahib is. As-sijn, like sahib is somebody who you eat together, sleep together, live together, walk together, do things together. That's what sahib is. So he says, you are my sahib. We are all together. We do things together in this prison. Let me tell you some hard realities here. And he says, أَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِّقُونَ خَيْرٌ? Are multiple gods better? Are multiple Rabb better? Arbab is a plural of Rabb. So when he says Arbab, so it could mean, so the different meanings of Rabb, right? One meaning of Rabb is Allah himself. And the other meaning of Rabb is the owner of the house, right? The owner of the house is also Rabbatul Bayt. So they know both, right? These prison mates know both. So now he's putting a rhetorical question. So we learned that when you have very short time, you should not give a long lecture. We talked about that yesterday. You should not give a long lecture to your, colleagues, your friends, or your professors, but you should just implant some questions. Put some questions in their mind. Let them think through it. Don't think that, oh, they need to convert right now. I cannot lead them until they say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. Brother, you better say that, because I'm not gonna waste my time just sitting and saying no. You plant the questions in their mind. And so the question he's planting is that, think about this. Are multiple gods better? Multiple arbabs better? Or one? So then how do we understand this? Okay. In our circumstances, we can think about working in a company, right? Working in a company, if you have multiple bosses you have to respond to, right? Is that easy to do, or just one chain of command, right? So like sometimes could happen like you have 2-3 bosses, right? And then they're all giving you different instructions and you know who to please. You don't know whose work do I do? Like somebody comes and says, I need this in 5 minutes. Another one comes and says, I need this in 2 minutes. Oh, like, who do I do? And they're going to all be upset with you at the end, right? So you don't know. It's going to be a mess, right? So is that better? So you think about a school setting, right? Think about a teacher, right? The teacher has multiple bosses, right? One boss obviously is a department head, right? And then on top of that, you have maybe the principal, right? Or in a company also, an employee could have a supervisor and then a manager or something. And then he has like the CEO, right? And the CEO of the company or the principal of the company, of the school, comes and says, hey, I need this from you, get it done. And then the department head also says the same thing, or the supervisor says the same thing, something else, like he gives a command. What would you do? If you tell, oh, I was just doing the principal's work, the department head might get upset. Well, what do you mean principal's work? You have to report to me. You can't do, no, it's a principal. And then the principal, you try to Tell the principal, no, the department head, had something. What do you mean, department head? I am the boss of the department head too. So you have to, so like this is chaos. So is that better? Or one Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? One person to please. That's one way of understanding. Now the question comes is, these people they did not worship multiple gods anyways. There was no concept of multiple gods, idols back in them, back in their time, right? So they didn't really like have that. They're used to one. Like Rabbatul Bayt is also one. Owner of the house, if they are slaves, only one master, right? So then how do we understand this? The arbab could refer to different forces, people who have different powers, right? They're different powers. Like in a society that doesn't have gods and idols, it's forces, right? So for example, a person can have cultural force on them, like the culture is pushing them to act a certain way. Then you can have the family pushing you to do a certain thing at a certain way, right? You have the force at work, the boss at work is trying to pull you at a certain direction. Then the government trying to pull you the different forces acting. Who do you try to please? Which force do you try to please? Right? Any force you try to please, any Rabb or master you try to please, the other one is going to be unhappy. But if there's only one force, only one being who you have to really please, if that's and that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then isn't it so much easier? Is it life so much easier? Right? And that pleasing that master is what really matters to you. أَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِّقٌ Amillahul Wahidul Qahar. If you are going after pleasing Allah, you don't have to worry about anybody else. Yes, people will get mad at you. People will get, like the Aziz's wife did not like that. Fasta'asam, right? The brothers do not like that. No, people will not like that. But if your focus is Allah, then everything else, is easy. Also, if you notice, the thing with multiple forces and multiple gods, right? They're always at odds with each other. They always fight each other, right? So if did you guys study Hinduism? You did in world religions? Yeah. So Hinduism or Greek mythology, right? So they have like multiple gods. You may have studied in Catholic school, right? So multiple gods, like trying to fight, sun god fighting the moon god, or like, god of rain. Like they all have this different phases, and they all trying to fight each other, right? They themselves are not in unison. So is that better or one, right? Also in our times, we have different ideologies, different isms, you can call them, right? Isms like feminism, humanism, pluralism, communism, capitalism, right? All these different isms, they're all different kinds of religion, different forces, different mindset. Liberalism, big one, right? So these are all different isms that are out there. And he says, are all these better or just pleasing that one God? Okay. Now he does a comparison now. أَرْبَابٌ مُتَفَرِقُونَ خَيْرٌ أَمْ Allah, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's the description of Allah? There are two descriptions of Allah given here. Al-Wahid and Al-Qahhar. Okay. Al-Wahid and Al-Qahhar. These two names, the word Wahid comes 6 times in the Quran, and Qahar also comes 6 times in the Quran with Wahid. So every time you see Wahid, you will see Qahar, right? Not Ahad, but Wahid exactly, right? Wahid al-Qahar, al-Wahid al-Qahar comes repeatedly. We'll talk about the beauty of that in a second. But these two names are inseparable. Okay, let's talk about Wahid. Allah is one. Okay, the thing about one God, if you think about a non-Muslim, don't think about a Muslim, a non-Muslim, or somebody who's a mushrik, who believes in multiple gods, multiple forces, multiple things. The thing about them, when they hear about one God, they think one God is associated with weakness, right? You only got one God? I got 20 gods. My 20 gods can take on your one God, like this type of a thing, because they're so used to thinking about human beings. Like if you're having a fight with somebody, right? If you got 20 guys with you and the other guy is only one, what happens? That one is associated with weakness, right? It's, yeah, no, they're nobody. We can easily take them, right? So in their worldview, multiple gods makes more sense because you can go to different gods for different things, right? There are different departments. So you can go to different gods based on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here, he says, no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah is al-wahid. Yes, he is one, but don't think he is weak. Don't think that he's going to be overwhelmed with a lot of requests. People can say, if there's one God, oh my God, that God must be getting a lot of text messages, a lot of messages from the people, right, to respond back. So how is he going to manage all of that? So this concept is constantly there in the Quran. Do you think Allah has become tired in making the creation? That Allah is incapable of doing this? So then the other word comes, beautifully here. Qahhar. Allah is Wahid, but you know what? He's Qahhar, the one who overwhelms everything, the one who overpowers everything. And Qahhar is also mubalagha, right? It's a mubalagha. Someone who overwhelms again and again and again and again. He can take on your gods. You can bring them millions of gods, bring them millions of gods, he can take them on. Okay, so Wahid al Qahar, constantly, right? So that's a beautiful thing about this name here, Al Wahid al Qahar. So that's the message he's giving these young prison mates, that this is who Allah is. This is who, these are his qualities. Okay, so that's ayah number 39. And then he continues on, right, with his da'wah in the next ayah number 40. Okay. Um, so before I move forward, one thing to note here, that's something I guess you guys have already studied in da'wah, for those of you that did a little bit of da'wah, that we always bring people to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? That is a key here, right? You never talk about, oh, why does Islam tell you to wear hijab? Why do men have to do this thing? Why do you guys have to pray 5 times? All of these things, questions will keep coming. Why do you have to eat halal food? No, forget all that. The focus should be, who is your allegiance to? Who is your Rabb? Who do you follow? Right? Why do you follow? Go back to the oneness of Allah. Al-Wahid, Al-Qahar. Why do I do shukr? Because I'm grateful to Him. Right? All of these concepts. And I'm not the only one doing this. My parents, my forefathers, and this legacy, this is a huge history from the beginning of humanity. This has been the case that people worship one God. So you kind of ground yourself there. And then people ask, why do you do this? Oh, that Rabb, Al-Wahid Al-Qahar, has given this law. That's it. Yes.
I mean, said before, but even the Quran says the word of Allah itself says with the command before, "Ya ayyuhal aman." It clearly says it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not to be forced on everyone.
Yeah.
First, they have to believe and then do the command.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something always has shared before, that all the commandments in the Quran, or ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, or you who believe, here is a command for you. Only when you believe you'll understand the command. Yes. So there's no point in trying to answer like a branch of the tree when you can focus on the root itself. Go down to the roots, go down to the foundations of things, and that's what the Quran constantly keep addressing. We have to become people of foundations, right? Foundations. We go back to the foundations. Why do we do this? What is the epistemology of knowledge? That's very important. Where do you get this? Like if you're doing a certain thing in Islam, right? Don't you have to think about, why do I do it? Is that really from Allah? Is that really from the book of Allah? Or is that something made up culture, right? Or some cultural thing? You gotta differentiate that, right? That's very important. Then your iman will be stronger. Then you can convey this better also, right? What is true, what is asl, and what is just the tertiary things. Okay. So now the question obviously that you're gonna have right away is, what do you mean Allah is one? How about these other forces, right? All these other, the society, the other gods, the minister, the Egyptian minister, the king, all of these, they could all have these different questions in their mind. And before even they ask that question, he immediately goes on and says, "Ma ta'buduna min dunihi illa asma'an sammaytumuha." Whatever you worship besides Allah, it's nothing but names that you have called, you have made up yourself. All of that are names made up by you. Whether you call, Krishna, or all these idols, um different idols, Hindu gods, right? Lakshmi, all these other things. These are all names that you have called yourself. You have named them, right? Antum, you did it yourself. So imagine a Hindu or somebody who has a lot of reverence to their religion, to the scripture. They day and night practice their faith. They may even climb, so many steps to go and see this temple, right? And do things. and offer some food to the idols and whatnot. And subhanAllah, in just one statement, Yusuf as-salam just says, no, these are just made up. These are just made up things. What we see here is that da'wah is not going to be a happy thing or a friendly thing. They will have a lot of oppositions because you're basically attacking their faith. You're basically attacking the very foundations they stand on, right? To the point, so much so that in the Quran, Allah destroys the idol worshipping philosophy by just with an example of a fly, right? Allah uses the example of a fly to destroy their philosophy. Right? You believe that these idols have power, that they provide you with food, that they have the power to do things. They are so weak that the food that you offer them, right? They can't even protect their own food, right? Because a fly would come, right? A fly would come and sit on the nose of one of these idols, look at the idol on its face, on its eyes, and say, "Hi, excuse me, I'm gonna go and eat some of your food. You okay with that?" And go down and eat from the food of these idols and just walk away and fly away, and nobody can stop it. This is how weak these idols are. Right? ضَعُفَ الطَّالِبُ وَالْمَطْلُوبُ. The one who's seeking is weak. The one who's sought is weak. How weak? We try to if you go to temples, people are just trying to hey, shoot, a dog comes or something, cat comes, eats from the, idol's food. They're trying to get rid of it. But Allah saying, look how weak this is. How weak of a foundation it is. So He says, "Ma ta'buduna min dunihi illa asma'an sammaytumuha." You made up these things. No, what do you mean we made up this? No, this is our forefathers. Our forefathers, our grandfather, our great great grandfather. We all have this tradition. Are you making fun of that? Yeah, antum wa aba'ukum. Even your forefathers have made this up, right? He's again, subhanallah, trying to attack their entire lineage, right? This is how da'wah is going to be, right? You gotta get to the point. You gotta get to the point. Ma anzalallahu biha min sultan. Allah has not given any power. You think they have power? You think they have some sort? No, they don't have power. People have just attributed power to them, but they themselves don't have any power. Inil hukmu illa lillah, right? Very important here, and that is "Inil hukmu illa lillah." The hukum belongs to Allah alone. Hukum means governance, rule, power, all of that belongs to Allah alone. And a lot of people like to misquote this ayah and say that it is not possible, it is impermissible for you to live under a non-Islamic rule. You have to have Islamic rule. You have to live under Islamic governance because in hukmu illa lillah, hukum belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So this is why this is a very famous ayah. This ayah comes twice. This part of the ayah, in hukmu illa, comes twice. One here, once in An'am. So if you think about it, right, people have to live under the Islamic governance. This ayah is coming in Surah Yusuf, right? And Surah Yusuf, we know that Yusuf alayhi salam is going to become a minister, finance minister, and he's going to be living under the rule of a non-Muslim king. He's going to follow the law of the king. Fi dinil malik. He's going to follow the deen of the malik, right? Of the king, right? So he's going to follow exact as long as the law does not contradict your own practices. There's nothing wrong with it. And so people misquote this, and that's not the case. What we see here in Surah Yusuf, that's not the context of this ayah at all. It's not talking about Islamic, governance or khilafah or things like that. And even in An'am, it's not talking about that, right? So what is the meaning of this then, right? Hukum, governance and power and rule. What he's saying is that the idols don't have any governance. The idols don't have any power, authority. Only Allah does. Only Allah has all power. Only Allah has all authority. Nobody else has any authority, right? You cannot make a religion on your own that you don't have the permission to do. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dunya. Amara Allah ta'budu illa iya. He has commanded that you worship none except Him, because hukum belongs to Him. So hukum belongs to Him because therefore you should only worship Him. Hukum belongs to Him, and therefore nobody else has any sultan. So look at the beginning and the first part of the ayah and the last part of the ayah. Before hukmu illa lillah, before and after, both of them are talking about hukmu illa lillah. Right? The sultan, nobody is a sultan, Allah is a sultan. So hukmu illa lillah, al hukmu illa lillah. And ta'budu illa iya, worship should be only to Him. In hukmu illa lillah. Right? Hukum and governance and power and wisdom all belongs to Allah only. And this last part, inshallah, where he says, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ, that is the qayyim deen. Now it's deen now, not millah, right? So again, you have to see the difference, in the book. But anyway, so this is the qayyim deen. Very important. The word qayyim is upright, right? Something that's upright, something that's stable, something that does not move, something that does not change. Very similar to the ayah in Surah Al-Kahf. Alhamdulillah alladhi anzala ala abdihi al-kitaba wa lam yaj'al lahu 'iwajan qayyiman. This kitab is qayyim. He says that this deen, this is the qayyim deen. وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. Surah Bayyinah also says this. وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ, the upright. So what does that mean? Right? Meaning that this deen is so upright and so firm, so strong, that the laws of this deen never ever change. They always remain upright. They always remain solid. For example, a zina will always remain haram no matter what time you're in. No matter which era you're living in, zina will remain haram. Stealing will remain haram. Right? Alcohol will remain haram no matter which era you're in. Whether you're at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, or Ishaq alayhi salam, or Yaqub alayhi salam, or Yusuf alayhi salam, or Rasulullah or at 21st century, does not matter. The laws of this deen will never ever change. Right? Think of an example. Think of this analogy of a tree. Imagine a tall tree in the middle of a river, right? There's a river and there's a tall tree, right? And everything around the tree is moving. Everything around the tree is being pushed by the water, right? It's pushed down. It's moving. It's changing. And the only thing that remains firm is this tree, firmly rooted and tall, strong. And if you want to remain steadfast, save yourself, you got to hold on to this tree. If you hold on to this tree, you're not going to be, pushed around by the pressure of the river. So similarly, Allah is saying this deen, the principle of this deen, the values of these deen will never change. The laws can be adapted. The way the laws are applicable can be different, right? So back in the days, this is how the law used to be applied. Now it's applied differently. That's completely fine, but the values do not change, right? The principles and the values remain the same, right? They do not change. And that's a very powerful message for these young prison mates, Fatayan. These young prison mates, also a beautiful da'wah, a beautiful, speech topic for youth. What is a good speech topic for youth, right? A young person who went through the trouble and he's giving his message to another group of young people, right? Two prison mates, young prison mates, a beautiful, beautiful message. And he says that this is the upright religion. You got to know your history. You got to know where you came from. You got to look at the world around you, be grateful to the, favors of Allah around you, recognize that. And you got to know where you're heading, right? You better not just go with the flow, right? So that's why, interestingly, liberalism, there are things they call it waves of liberalism. The term uses waves of liberalism, right? Wave one, wave two. I think is beyond the 11th wave or something like that. Every few centuries it changes, right? Of what it means to be liberal, right? So the wave, if you think about wave, the analogy of something that's not firm, something that's not stable, something that keeps changing, and something that keeps moving. But this Quran, Allah says, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى. If you hold on to it, you have held on to a solid anchor. A ship is going to just float. It's just gonna go by the the direction of the water. But if you have an anchor, solid anchor, then nothing can move. It will remain solid, remain firm. And subhanAllah, that's what Allah, this message is, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. This is an upright, firm religion. So you could be living in 21st century and you're the only guy praying, and nobody else prays. You're the only guy that kind of says, no, this is wrong. The entire class is saying something else. The entire class is opposite. But you're the only guy kind of standing up to the truth because Quran says it. Right? You're trying to understand how that's the truth because your mind is also covered up, all these wrong ideas. You're actually not able to think through. You're brainwashed to think in a certain way. But the Quran says that you stand up. You might be the weirdo. You might be the weird person standing up, but that's okay. Because Yusuf alayhi salam was the weirdo in his time, right? In his time, so many thousand years ago. And so Yusuf alayhi salam, he went through a lot of change in his life, right? He went through a lot of change, yet when it comes to his values, they did not change, right? The values did not change, even though his circumstances were changing constantly, right? He is exposed to some of the dirtiest things possible, right? He's exposed to dirtiest things when it comes to politics. He's exposed to dirty things when it comes to the women, to the elite society, to everything possible, right? To slavery. He's exposed to all those negative things, all those, dirty things. Yet Yusuf alayhi salam does not give up on his values, does not give up on his principles. That I'm going to remain firm. ذلك الدين القيم. That is the firm deen. ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. But most people do not know. Most people do not know this. You are not of those people now. You too, I have already conveyed the message to you. You're not of those people who don't know, but there's still a lot of people who do not know, right? So he concludes his speech with that. So the next inshallah, ayah number 41, we'll cover that tomorrow. This is where he actually going to go and tell about what the dream is, right? So we'll pick it up inshallah tomorrow and see what happens next. Okay. And by the way, if you were to just time, I mentioned this before, if you were to just time these ayats, just less than a minute, right? Very short speech, right? I'm not saying he only gave a speech for 1 minute. Allah is capturing that, for us to, understand what he said, but it's a very powerful speech, very short, right? Very short, to the point, drop the hints, let people think about things and then move on. Okay. Okay, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, to allow us to, hold on to this firm deen, بِذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمِ. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all grateful people, inshallah, and make us people who are always seeking out the, the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the connection, the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every situation you put in, right? So there's no excuse not to follow deen. There's no excuse. No, nobody can say, by the way, that, oh, I'm living in the 21st century. living in Canada. I am doing this. I am different. Allah will excuse me, right? I think there's an ayah that kind of gives me excuse for doing this haram thing. No, there's no such thing, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this deen is qayyim, everything about it is complete, it's done, right? So don't stop giving yourself the excuse to do the wrong thing. Okay, so inshallah, and here, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. So we'll do a small dua, inshallah, and then if you have any reflections, we can take that as well. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو كريم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم أجرنا من النار. اللهم أجرنا من النار. اللهم أجرنا من النار. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Tomorrow we will not have any class. We'll have the class on Saturday, inshallah. Okay, so tomorrow is Jummah. We'll just I have a lot of khutbahs to do, so I'm able to do it. So inshallah we can continue the class on Saturday, 5 o'clock ish. Okay, any reflections? Questions? Yeah.
I mean, in this ayah number 40, when it says that, like, all the other names are just made up names. This applies to everything, not just Hinduism.
Yeah.
All the additions in the Bible, all the additions in the Gospel, in the Torah, any religion you pick, and not just the Buddhism, everything is just made up.
Made up. Yep.
It
Yep.
just means, and the other thing here, he starts and ends with this is like the main hukum that is for the people, all mankind, is to worship Allah. He focuses on that, like how they have, like you were saying in lecture, like we have to bring it back to the oneness of Allah. He's actually showing us, he's doing it and showing it in the ayat that, like that's the only main purpose for you right now. It's not about, like the ruling, how to do things. You have to understand who your Rabb is and worship that Rabb.
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah, brings it back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
he begins from there only.
Yeah.
Like who's giving you food and everything, and he also ends with that.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
like this is what you have to be doing.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. So that's just the first point I want to just reiterate. That's Sammaytumuha. All the false gods are made up names, not just Hinduism. Any religion you come across, or they say that this is the name of this god and this is what this god does. All that is made up. There's no evidence to it, right? There's no backing. There's no proof. Quran says, "Qul hatu burhanakum." Bring your proofs, right? Show us the proof. Where is the proof that these gods do these things, right? Where is the kitab? Where is the ayah, right? Yeah. Good. Okay. Anything else? Excellent. Okay, inshallah, we'll end here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. See you guys tomorrow, Saturday, inshallah. Okay, I guess. Assalamu alaikum. By the way, last 10 nights, so lots of du'as, sadaqat, your salah, right? Make sure you guys are doing qiyam, inshallah. And lots of, du'a. Last ashara is going to be lots of du'a, seeking refuge from, refuge in Allah from the, from the hellfire, right? Allahumma jinna min an-nar, a lot of that, inshallah. We ask Allah, inshallah, to accept everyone's ibadah and allow us to, inshallah, complete the month of Ramadan in the best way possible. Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.